Welcome to chapter number 4, which talks about managing the scope and requirements. Obviously, these are scope and requirements in context with the project. So let's get into details of it. So we are now starting with the real units which are mapped to the PMI framework, which we already discussed in the previous chapter. So this is the first unit which give a foundation of project problem statement, which is the scope and requirements. So when you talk about requirements, there are three types of requirements majorly that we have to understand. First is the business requirement, solution requirement, and stakeholder requirement. The business requirement is in the context of uh, customers and services what we are going to offer, or the product what we are going to develop, so utility of that product. So those business requirements, as well as when you are producing that product or services, what are the uh, resources required at the runtime when the product is there or that services are running with the customers. So those requirements you have to understand and note down and then implement it into our scope. Solutions. So solutions requirement is like a different elements of the problems. We have to break down the problems into sub problems and we have to identify the solution in respective sub problems. So that will be mapped and ultimately integrated to solve the big problem. So it is like divide and conquer. So solution requirements. Stakeholders. See, stakeholders is not only the customer. There are any number of stakeholders will be there, considering even the company's own interests. So there are many people which are possibly the stakeholders. Then the employees also stakeholders who are offering the services or who are selling the product. So those all requirements we have to understand. Suppose one product is there and we want to the sell person go into the market. So he is supposed to demo it. So when you are developing that product, you have to understand how we can demo it easily, and customer can how quickly can understand the features of the product. So those are requirements which we have to understand at the initial definition or in the scope of the project itself. Now, why we do this, all the requirement analysis first? Why we have to manage the requirements? Obvious reasons. See, enabling effective scope management means unless our scopes are defined, we can't plan anything. So your planning is begin with the scope and the requirement analysis. So we have to enable the effective scope management. Next, we have to reduce the cost. How we can plan? We can plan for the cost in terms of money that will be involved to development, okay, of the project. So we have to understand what are the different cost factors. Now we can effectively have cost cuttings or cost savings, we can say. Next part is quality. So every aspect we have to understand whatever we are delivering, how we can map to the quality norms, and we have to ensure that product or the services are fulfilling that norms. Then timeline. Of course, the timeline is not clear unless your scope is clear. So your scope is very foundation, the main bottom line to which we have to map our timeline. And finally, the risk. See, risk analysis again is the one unit that we are separately going to understand. Every project is associated with some sort of risk. So we have to take into consideration at the beginning, in the initial stage, in the scope of the project itself. So where are the requirement managed in the organization? So which different elements where we have to do the requirement management process? At first of all, planning stage, strategic planning stage. Strategy to execution is it is a plan, as I said in the previous chapter. The beginning, initialization of the project and the closure of the project. In between, there is a recursive process, which is planning, execution, and control and monitoring. See, this is we have to do continuously, and that process is ultimately controlled or guided through the requirements. So, strategic planning, portfolios, business requirements are used to link the strategy to the portfolio of changes. So we have to align different users, different developers, their portfolios, and that we have to fix up. Program business requirements are used to define the program scope and success criteria. So when you are moving in, see, development is a continuous process, right from the initialization to the closure. So where we have the different stages, different landmarks, those we have to fix up through the scope, and we have to define the success criteria, whether we achieve that requirements at that point of time. Project business stakeholder requirements are used. So this is what, of course, what we are discussing in the entire unit in this. Solution non-functional. The solution non-functional and transitional requirements are used to build the implementation. So there are many functional solutions and there are non-functional solutions that we are going to understand in further discussion. So we have to see even transition requirements. So when you are moving from one aspect to the another aspect, there will be some transitions that we have to take into consideration. Continuous improvement. See, as I said, it is a process. It is a continuous process from initialization to the closure, and we have to have continuous follow-up and improvisation. That is what covered through the scope. So the first thing what we can do is we have to plan. So there is something called requirement management plan, and these are the different pointers which are involved in the planning stage. So we can have contents of the typical RMA contain the following sections: stakeholders' roles and responsibilities. So we have to identify who are the stakeholders, which are their responsibilities. Stakeholders include the developers, the supporting services, including the account department, who give the cost, this cash for the running the show. So all those are stakeholders. We have to understand which their responsibilities. Then there are further pointers which you have to go through the books and find out what are their respective importance. So I'm not going to elaborate here, but these are the pointers for planning, initial planning, requirement planning. Now, who create this RMP? That is the requirement plan, business analyst, with inputs from the project managers. So it is a joint activity by project manager with business analyst who design this RMP and who approve it. The leaders from each software delivery lifecycle SDLC team. So SDLC team will go through it, we will endorse it, will approve it with the joint discussion, obviously with the project manager. Who participate in the RM process, requirement management process? Subject matter expert, because when the particular project is there, the project is basically from respective domain, maybe from medical domain, insurance domain, from banking domain, finance, human resource. So accordingly, we need to align our requirements, and who will give that requirement? The subject matter expert. And that is why we have to involve him in the very important first stage, who will understand the requirements and transfer it to the developers. Business analyst is gather, analyze, and document. So analyst's role is crucial because he understands from the domain expert, transfer it into the technological point of view, and document it appropriately so that developers can understand. And he can be a bridge between the developer team and the experts. Then designers come into pictures who are going to design the solution, who are going to develop algorithms and all that, or develop the front end, back end, all those designers. And developer, of course, implement it. Once the things are designed, you have to implement and you have to understand how they can be incorporated. Testers, once the things are developed, they have to test it at every unit stage, at every modular stage, and you have to trace it. So we'll see how it tracing to the requirements, whether the requirements are satisfied through the each model level. See, once you develop entire project and you realize that something is lagging, it is very difficult to realign the things, and it is costly affair. So that is why normally at every stage we have to verify and trust the requirements are being incorporated or not. Project manager looking at the entire overall control, progress, and how the things are running. Change management analyst also very vital, who determine the organizational changes due to obviously the project is going to be a very long activity, and there may be a lot of changes. People change, maybe machinery change, or maybe material change. So there are many changes obvious in the process. So how somebody will be there to map that changes with the requirement and ensure that the requirements are not missed out due to these changes. Now, if you look at the process itself, the requirement management process, these are the pointers. So, which is obviously already discussed more or less, which is as per the previous slide pointers, okay, which just further detailing is given in the book. So, you can look into these pointers. Now, what is the entire cycle of requirement implementation? So we begin with the requirement. Why do you want it? So requirement and scope. This is the initialization process. And once we understand the requirement of the project, then we design. For design, we have to discuss with the stakeholders. So and the business experts, domain experts, to understand their again requirements. What are their needs? And then design the solution. Then and once you understand the business logic, business requirement, you have to look for the how we can implement that business logic in our software part or IT parts or even hardware requirements. Sometimes we require some specialized hardware to implement the requirements. Then it will go to the transition requirements. Maybe some changes are there. We deploy it. First we'll develop solution, you deploy to the team, then they will give feedback, and there may be some changes. And again the things will move on and we can access the outcome. Again maybe some requirement pop up or the alignment again realign. So it is like a cycle. So requirement maybe sometime improvisation cycle. So first we come out with something and which will not cover entire exact aspect. So we have to improvise further. So it is a cycle. So these are some artifacts when you develop requirements. Very important because these are the some things which will be our tools when we are really implementing the things. When your requirements are being mapped through these tools. Okay, so we have to develop some documentation like business concepts. We can say requirement analysis which come out with all business concepts. Then you have to give the information flow or data flow, you can say. And these are all different diagrams sort of things. What we have to really as an engineer, so that it is like architectural things which before going into the project, building the project, we have to develop some architectural design or map so that we can build on that. So this is what GUI is a graphical user interface. So when you have business, when end user is using the software or the platform, how we will be navigating through this. So we have to finally work out with that. Then we have to develop a prototype, give it to the end user, find their feedback, and then improvise. So that is what it is, a continuous process of improvisation. So it is a continuous cycle. Now, what are the attributes of requirements? The following attributes, which are the characteristics we can say to capture when you are capturing the requirements. Identify the name of the requirement. You can have description, version number. See, many times we'll come to the version. Important thing is the one go it is not happening that it is perfect. So we have to come out with the improvisation, and that is what is the version is. Requirement type, change history, status, priority, owner, trace information. These are all documentation part. And these are all attributes we have to capture at the respective requirement analysis stage. This is something very important, traceability. So you can see it is a pyramid. So we can have bottom-up approach or we can have top-down approach. See, in top-down approach, actually we are analyzing the requirements, basic requirements, business requirements, and then you are breaking down to the different sub-module or we can say problem statements, and then we break down further. We will consider stakeholder respect to the particular requirement. We will talk to the respective stakeholders, get inputs from them, and then we further freeze our problem statement, the scope, and the requirements, and then we come out with the solutions. Okay, there are functional solution, non-functional solutions. So we come out with the solution requirement. We develop some scenario or use cases. The more technically it is called use cases, scenarios. And for each scenario, use cases, we have to come out with the test cases. So there is a traceability. You can understand the traceability. So you have to break down. So every test will be somewhere traceable to the basic requirements, top level. So that any requirement is not meeting, we can check whether the test is performed or whether the test is being incorporated during the our cycle of requirement analysis and development. So this is what is very important concept called traceability. This is the real documentation part, we can say, requirement artifacts, types and traceability, which previous slide we talked about attributes, and there are even artifacts we have discussed in the previous slide. So this is what is, we can say, business analysis document. We have to have SLA, sort of analysis and requirement specification. Then we have to map it to the information model, information flow or data flow, we can say. Then even business analysis. Then there is a use case model. We have to verify every time. We have to validate the use case. We have to validate in process model, business process model. Further validate into business case. So this is something we can see a complete flow, process flow for requirement capturing implementation. So this is an initial exercise, vigorous exercise before we really start developing it. And how much time you spend and how seriously you carry out this exercise is going to define your success of the project. Versioning. This is what I said previously. See, there may be a development and improvisation. So we have to go through the versions. So we come out with some solution, we deploy it, user gives some feedback, certain points we have to improvise, and accordingly we will come out with the next solution. And this keep on doing it. So we have to have different versions of it. So all your development go through the different development cycles which are coming out as a version. So, but we have to document all these versions. Whatever changes we implemented, all those should be documented. Now there is something called baseline, requirement baseline, and there is a over a period there will be changes. But ultimately, as we saw in the pyramid, there will be some basic requirements we have to understand. So the baseline strategy that includes defining the baseline in terms of creation, frequency, contents, and publishing. Baseline is a vehicle for communicating changes in the detail. So it is over a period, as you go through the different process or cycles, you can see over a period it is a snapshot of requirements. It is not a single thing. Snapshot is a one-time snapshot, but baseline is a comparison between the requirement all over the subset. So in this previous slide, we have to understand that we have gone through the requirements and then break down that requirement into different levels. So we have to develop a baseline strategy that include all those creations, contents. So mechanism to package the set of requirements, particular points in time and pass that of the next group. So when you go on developing or improvising through the cycle and building the project from one level to the next level, this baseline is going to be a snapshot of different stages that you have to understand. Baseline can be formal or informal. So formal when you describe the project milestone that carries a formal acceptance of the requirements. So formal is something which is well documented, well discussed from the top level to the developer level. Where informal is something which is within the project team, within the developer or the project managers. We can have this type of some sort of informal discussion or informal development of some changes or some baseline modifications that we can say. So correction at the point of time. Okay, so this is what is informal, which may not be documented, but somewhere it is captured through versions. So minimum set requirement attribute. So this is not supposed to be frequent changes, some informal changes which are time based, which are particular context based, that we have to understand. The main feature of requirement management tools. Now management tools, I'm going to put in the last slide. There are many softwares which are readily available as requirement management tools, and which are the main features which we should look for in those softwares. So that is listed here. We will see that particular tools, how we can have. These are commercial tools, which of course you can have Excel sort of simple exercise, where through also you can plan it, manage it. But if you will look for the more professional tools, there are requirement management tools available. So requirement management, critical success factors for requirement management planning. So these are some aspects which will cover the requirement management tools that well elaborated in our book. How these are covered. So we have to understand work to ensure that requirement plan is implemented at project start and adhere to that. This is very important. Adhere to and incorporate throughout the full life cycle of the project. So whatever we define at the beginning, scope and requirement, we have to adhere to that throughout the project. So tool will capture that and will always remind us or will bind us. So this is what is the requirement planning stage, what we have to understand. Ensure the customer, so it will take care of all elements, customers, stakeholders, managers, developers. So it is like a common platform so that we can have good communication between them. So these tools will handle this. See, communication, team members, try to ensure that all team members understand important, adhering to the requirement management plan. So plan and the execution. So plan, execution, and tracing, continuous control, monitoring. All these things is a recursively happening throughout the process of development of project. And all those we have to monitor or handle through the tools. So these are some tools which I am mentioning here. Sperateam, Jibria, CodeBeamer. These are application lifecycle management. So complete development and they take care. These are the softwares which are readily available, and there are many new softwares keep coming. So these tools one can buy to handle more complex projects and which will help us make overall process more easy to monitor, plan and handle in the exact execution of the project. So these softwares one can look for, or the tools we can look for. So this is what is the coverage of this chapter, which is mainly focused as a foundation of the project, because scope and the requirement is the beginning or the starting point of our project development. Thank you very much.